All right. All right. We back. We have a live debate or discussion that I'm gonna have with the brother. First and foremost, I give all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High God, Yahweh, and I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Of course, many of y'all who are tuning in know me. I'm Chief Priest Alazar Lawyer, aka the Guerrilla Hebrew. I'm joined by my brother Qana Lawah. For those of y'all that aren't familiar with the brother, I'm gonna give himself a chance to introduce himself and give, I guess, like a brief background on himself. He's been teaching on YouTube for years. I've known and been, acquainted with the brother for years, and built with the brother as well, and things of that nature. So I'm gonna let the brother introduce himself, and then we could kind of proceed into tonight's discussion. So without any further ado, go ahead.
Tawra, Shalom, Yashra. It's your boy Qana. I'm sure a lot of people know who I am. Like Brother Alazar said, I've been on YouTube for a while, about 4 years now. Been on Facebook a little longer than that. Teaching the word, trying to wake the nation, everything for the glory of Yahweh, trying to extol his name above all. We've just been teaching around, going around, doing all kinds of stuff, and now we're here to have a little discussion about certain topics. Take it away.
Salaki. All right, most definitely. All praises. I got a few questions lined up. So I guess for starters, the first question we want to ask to kind of lay the foundation is basically, what tribe are you from and do you identify with?
I identify most with Levi.
Okay, perfect. How did you come to the conclusion that you are likely a Levite?
Well, started out with a bunch of people, just saying so, just like, hey man, you kind of fit this. Hey man, you kind of fit this, from a lot of people. And then if you just go through scriptures, man, one of the main, prerequisites of that is the temple knowledge. Only Levites, were the ones to minister the temple, and especially the knowledge and stuff, especially the priest line, from Aaron. So just off of a few things like that, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have been able to even touch the temple if I wasn't.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, my next question would be, who are the Negroes that are victims of the transatlantic slave trade? What would be their biblical identity or nationality?
The West Africans, right? The transatlantic slave trade?
Yes, sir.
Those would be Hamites, mainly Canaanites and Philistines.
Okay, mainly Canaanites and Philistines.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I just say Egyptians is a broad term, but Philistines are pretty much Egyptians anyway. So.
Yeah, they come from Israel. Okay, makes sense. So my next question would be, who are the southern and northern kingdoms of Israel today?
Well, are we just talking like Western Hemisphere or all over?
Get as I guess as descriptive as you can, all over.
Okay, well, there's like a huge bulk of us over here in the West, of course we know. So-called Native Indians, so-called Chicanos, Latinos, whatever you want to call us, There's also a lot of so-called Negroes or so-called Black people that are a part of that as well. They were here before Columbus, and they're also part of the Northern Kingdom. So everybody pretty much, not everybody, because there was some Hamites here, the Olmecs, but for the majority, the native peoples of the Americas prior to Columbus, those are, Israelites of the Northern Kingdom. Of course, we know through Second Esdras that, we came here. This is Arsareth. We also have a lot of brothers scattered elsewhere, because not every single Northern Kingdom brother came to the Americas. There's also brothers spread out through the East. A lot of them went to Japan. A lot of them went to Australia. Some of them went to the Philippines, some of them went to Russia. So we're kind of scattered everywhere, but there's certain little things that you can identify them with, obviously. But we're pretty much everywhere. And then Southern Kingdom is the same thing, pretty much. We're everywhere. We're throughout, you know, the whole world. But the Southern Kingdom predominantly came from Egypt, and they migrated. You know, there's still a lot of them in Africa, in the eastern parts, in northern Africa. There's some that are scattered to the east in India and all that stuff, and then also in Europe. Some of them were even brought to America as slaves, but predominantly those are known as gypsies since they came from Egypt. It's a misnomer, just like how Moses was called an Egyptian when he went into the land of Midian fleeing from Egypt. He wasn't an Egyptian, but they called him an Egyptian. Same thing as what's happening now. You know, they call them gypsies, but, you know, and not to say every single gypsy is the Southern Kingdom. But, you know, there are a lot of them that were brought to America that people don't know. And they assimilated into the natives and into the Chicano tribes, you know what I mean? The Latin tribes, they, to hide identity, you know what I mean? So there's actually a lot of brothers that are walking around that think they're, you know, Latino, but they're really from Europe. They were just brought here as slaves, especially to like the islands and stuff like that too. But it's different labels, different places as well, you know what I mean? So it just depends on where you're at.
Okay. So is there documentation of gypsies being brought to America in slavery?
Yes, there it is.
Can you like reference any sources off top so I can look into it? Because I've never heard that before.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they were slaves in Europe for even longer, for 400 years in some parts. And then a lot of them were kicked out. You know, they just kind of shipped them over here as slaves, and some of them were even known all over the place. But let me get that for you real fast. Yeah, I didn't grab that information. Ready, handy. You know what I mean? I just kind of prepared for the other ones. But just give me 1 second, and we will see if you can find that for you real fast. And then I also have the documentation to show that the Northern Kingdom was shipped all over, like to Africa and stuff too.
Okay, good stuff.
Let's see. Okay, we got one right here. Give me 1 second for it to load. Okay. Let's see. Here's the thing. Is a little excerpt. The most complete list of gypsy sentenced to transportation appears in, quote, this is where you can find it. Directory of Scots banished to American plantations, 1650 to 1775, by David Dobson, 1984, Baltimore, Maryland. Genealogical Publishing Company. That's one of the sources that talks about that, because it talks about other slaves as well. But you can also find extracts from Ian F. Hancock, and he talks about how during colonial period, Western Europe nations dealt with their gypsy problem by transporting them in large numbers overseas. The Spanish shipped gypsies to their American colonies, including Spanish Louisiana, as part of their Solución Americana. The French sent numbers to the Antilles, and the Scots, English, Dutch to North America and the Caribbean. Cromwell shipped Romanical gypsies, right, from Britain as slaves to the southern plantations. There's documentation of gypsies being owned by freed black slaves in Jamaica, and in both Cuba and Louisiana today, there are Afro-Romani populations, so they're mixing down there as well. But yeah, you can check out it pops up real easy if you find it. There's even like a little, I don't know if you could see a picture, and that gypsy lady looks a lot like a Native American or a Latina.
Okay.
Darker, you know, you see, and then there's her little slave master. Obviously, he's white, Caucasian.
Okay.
So there's that, and then let's see, what else do we have? Let me see if I can find something. It also talks about them coming from Egypt, because there's like a theory out there, just a lot of propaganda, just like there always is, about a lot of the gypsies coming from India, but they didn't really come from India. They went to India, and they actually came from Egypt. And another source to verify that is Manly P. Hall in Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Very interesting.
And then, and then also Samuel Roberts in his book as well talks about that. It's called The Gypsies by Samuel Roberts, and it was quoted by the Masons.
Okay.
So, you know, even they know and they have it in their documentation just as well. You could also look in Secret Teachings of All Ages, and there's a chapter dedicated to like the natives, and it mentions that we were Israelites in that as well. So that's a pretty interesting little thing. Just, you know, throw that out there.
Okay, most definitely. My next question with all that in mind would be, where is the modern day Babylon or land of the north that's talked about in prophecy?
Oh, the Americas, of course.
Okay, the Americas. So that would mean that you agree that there are a substantial amount of both kingdoms here going through a collective oppression in the Americas?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Um,
Mhm.
my next question would be, where are the Canaanites today? Or who are they? Where are they predominantly?
The Canaanites are actually kind of spread all over. You can find them in all parts of the world. The Arabs took them all the way over to the east, spread them all over. Like the cities, an example of that is the Siddi people, Siddi, from India, and they still dress like the Canaanites used to dress, and they even still practice some of their old culture. Because the city, right, in the Hebrew, there was the people of Sidon, right? We've heard of Sidon,
Yes, sir.
and in Hebrew it's Sadai, right? Or some people would say city or Sadai, you know what I mean? So that's where the city comes from. It's like a perversion of it, you know. You know how names get twisted, especially through transliteration and whatnot.
Yeah.
We see that in examples of the scriptures, especially when they translated it from like Zerubbabel and then Zorobabel. You know what I mean? It's like the same fucking shit. So it's the same thing, Sadai or city, and Sadai actually in the Hebrew means fisherman, and the city are fishermen. Like they still practice that of their old culture to this day,
Yes.
and they're like part of the lower caste system in India. You know what I mean? Part of like the Untouchables and all that shit. You know, because you've got Kushites over there as well. Those are like the Dravidians. You know, you got Kushites that mixed with the Elamites. You know, and they're still over there, and those are like the what they call the blue black people or whatever. That's where they get their imagery from or for Krishna and all that shit, you know, all the blue gods and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there's them, you know, that's like an example of them in the East. In the West, they came over here, you know, in transatlantic slavery. A lot of the Edomites brought them over here. They were sold by other Africans. Africans never liked the other Canaanites, or the Canaanites, their African brethren. They never liked them since way back in the day. And so they sold them up. They came here. You know, a lot of them are the Moors, what people call the Moors nowadays, and they even tell you that they're Canaanites themselves. And they're Masons, so you know they all have this hidden knowledge, secret knowledge that they slowly disseminate through the universities, because we know that all the universities, which is what we try to get our main documentation from, right, to be as legit as we can be, um, you know, scholarly research and whatnot, we know that they get their degrees from the Masons. You know, those guys run the mystery schools, which run the universities. You know what I mean? So really, you know, if you want to get it straight from the horse's mouth, you go to them. And they themselves, if you look up the Moorish Science Temple website, they'll break it down through the Holy Seven, the Circle Seven Quran that they call. It talks about that. Noble Drew Ali totally goes through all the history, and then they quote other historians talking about how the Canaanites had went into Africa since Joshua, since the time of Joshua. A lot of them fled. Even Yahweh talks about it in the Torah. You know, it says that he would drive a lot of the Canaanites out from before us. And then we went and warred with a lot of them, of course. We killed a lot of them. A lot of them stayed, you know what I mean? So, but predominantly, and then, in fact, there still is Canaanites in Africa. I mean, not Africa, sorry. That's horrible to call the Middle East Africa. But they're still in the Orient today. They're still in the land of Judea. And in fact, you can see them on some YouTube videos. If you want to check it out, they say that they say that they're Canaanites, and then they also say that they're reaching out to their brethren that are in the Americas to come home. And this is all in like YouTube videos of people that are in the Middle East talking with these Aboriginal Canaanites that are still there. A lot of them came to America. spread out. It's just like how it was back then. You know what I mean? Like if you read in the book of Judges, it says that Yahweh left a remnant of the Canaanites with us, and he also left the 5 lords of the Philistines as a test to us, and for those that never experienced the wars of Canaan, you know, because obviously we didn't go through those wars. That was thousands of years ago. So, you know, things repeat in the Torah. We know there's spiritual aspects of the Torah. We know these things keep going over and over. So that's one of those aspects that we have to look at is like, well, do we have those Canaanites and do we have those Philistines among us? You know what I mean? And then it talks about in the Torah and Zechariah how there won't be any more Canaanites in the house of Yahweh. You know, so it's like, well, you know, if they're not going to be in there anymore, they obviously are now. And then that goes back to even further when you know Solomon built his temple, he had Canaanites help him, nothing but a bunch of Canaanite labor, and the king also supplied a lot of the shit for it. So this is part of like also the temple mysteries and what it's telling us and what these symbols mean to us now. Because remember, Torah is eternal, so it's past, present, future. These things keep repeating themselves. More so now in the spiritual aspect, of course, you know, but we're still living the lives as our forefathers did. You know, we're going through the events that they went through just in our own way in modern times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So with that in mind, my question would be: how do we differentiate between who of the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, the Negroes that were brought here, who are the Canaanite or the Philistine, and who are the Israelite? How do we, you know, distinguish who's who?
Right. It would be the same answer that everybody gives for, you know, to the prior narrative, the narrative that's played now before I threw a monkey wrench into everything. The Latino tribes, right? You have to test the spirit whether these brothers are mixed with fucking Europeans and they're actually Edomites, or are they actually native Israelites? You know what I mean? And we got a lot of that shit going on. So that's not, see, that's the thing is that everybody kind of like took it wrong. You know what I mean? It wasn't running around saying all Negroes are fucking Hamites. That's dumb. You know, not running around saying, "Oh, fuck everybody." There's no way you could tell all this shit. You know what I mean? There's ways to tell. There's you know things that we can go by to help us do that. And one of them is to just go through the research, you know, and the history. And we know that those people from West Africa that were brought here were predominantly Hamite, and it's in the records. Like so many fucking people talk about it. And then we have to look at Torah and the prophecies, right? And we see that Canaanites were cursed to be these slaves of slaves, these lowest of slaves. That's like saying King of Kings or Lord of Lords. You know what I mean? Or you're the
But in
fucking
the opposite way.
yeah, yeah, but you know, yeah, but exactly in the opposite way. So a king of kings is like there's a bunch of kings, but that's the king of the kings. So slave of slaves is like saying, well, there's slaves, but then these guys are the slaves. You know what I mean? Like these dudes are the top of the slaves. And you know, through seeing this, like that. See, the problem is that we got to see that there's a conspiracy. You know, and we know that through Psalms 83. There's a conspiracy against our people to push us into to push us into folly. Been having bad allergy problems. Push us into folly and to keep us underneath the control of the heathen, right? Well, if we read in Psalms 83, it gives us the list of those nations. Well, amongst those nations are the Philistines and the Canaanites. You know what I mean? And so we have to really take a step back and look at this and be like, okay, well, it mentions this in the Torah. So how is this happening now? And an example of that is given is in the Falasha Jews in Ethiopia. A lot of people think that those are Israelites, and that's not to say that there aren't Israelites in Ethiopia that look black and blah, 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 and all this stuff, okay? But the Falashas themselves are not Israelites.
Yeah, well,
And
if
it's
I
in
can,
the
if
name.
I can comment to that real quick.
Right, right.
I know brothers who they've been starting to go to Israel pretty regularly, like a couple times a year.
Okay.
You know, elders from House of David, you know, who
Right,
came out
right.
of the West, and they say
Okay.
that the level of racism that they experience from the Ethiopians in Israel, the
Yes.
Falashas, is worse than the racism that they felt from white people in America.
Yes. And the reason for that is because what does falasha mean? Right? Let's take that word falasha. Falasha is the root word for Philistine. You know what I mean? It's the same word, and it means immigrant. And that's what they are. Notice that the Ethiopians were given fucking status in Israel. People just went and picked them up and took them the fuck home. What the hell is that? You know what I mean? And then they're put, all they do is practice Judaism.
We got to watch, yeah, the type of groups, because I've been researching, and there's certain groups that all over the world you have. For example, I know brothers been talking about the Inca Jews, brothers in Peru. Then you have certain groups in Africa. You have a group here, a group there. But for some
the
reason,
Pathans in India and shit, right?
But for some reason, Jewry, what they call, or the state of Israel, is accepting some of these people and saying, yeah, these are. But then other ones are not accepted. So I would think, just logically analyzing how they operate, the ones who they're accepting are the ones who aren't Israelites, and the ones who are not being accepted, who started following Torah and then later learned about Judaism and then converted to it, thinking that this would get them accepted. I believe that those would probably be the ones who we can deduce would be Israel versus the other ones who they're just taking open arms. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And then you just, like I said, you go through the history, and these people were always our enemies, the Philistines, and they've always been known as immigrants. They went from Egypt to Crete, and then they went from Crete to our land and took some of our shit over. And they're still doing the same shit now. See, that's the thing, is there's nothing new under the sun, they say, right? Well, that's one of those things, is that these nations keep doing the same things that they did in ancient times. That's another indicator too. The type of culture and the type of spirit and the type of attitude that these people have, in us included, right? We will portray the same attributes that our forefathers had. You know what I mean? Obviously, we come from their loins, bro. We're gonna have the same DNA. We're gonna have the same fucking physical feature. We're just gonna be the same people. So, we have to take a look at that. And that's one of those things that I wanted to bring up, is like the Philosopher Jews, man. Like, those dudes are fucking Philistines, man. That's even in the name, the Philistine Jews. The fucking, bro, they're just Philistines that convert, and then they got accepted by the Jews, And see, and that's the thing that I was trying to point out. And I know a lot of brothers get upset and shit like that. But see, that's the thing, is that we're ignorant as a people. So a lot of us are told that we're come from the West African slave trade, and we don't. We were here. We were natives, bro, but we got fucking mixed in with these people and labeled the same way. Look at the act. What was it? In Virginia or some shit? Everybody always brings that up, of how they labeled Native Americans as Negroes too. You know what I mean? Like that's. And then there's another book that I have. I put it in my video. I have a video about Native Americans. And natives were the first ones to be called Negro before they were even brought over here, right? So you have this, like, this like, we brought up this conspiracy to keep hiding our people and placing them amongst heathens and trying to say that we're the same as them, right? So we have this thing of where our people keep wanting to relate to the West African slave trade, but a lot of us aren't from that. And that whole thing with the Philosopher Jews is the same thing that's going on for the West Africans, especially for the Igbo and shit like that. There's a lot of stuff going around right now. There's a lot of, evidences, people say, and all this stuff about the Igbo and all this stuff. But like, if you really look at it, and if you really take it for what it is and examine it and look at the actual scholars and check out the actual shit that they're talking about, it's all lies, dude. Those people are nothing but fucking converts from fucking colonialism. You know what I mean? Like, they got fucking conquered. They converted because they saw a type of similar parallel between their story and our story, and then they just ran with it,
Yeah, my thing would be, because I learned this line of argumentation from dealing with these Afrocentric cats and guys who are into Egyptology. They'll ask, okay, well, show me, if we're the Israelites, show me these certain tribes, the ones that practice Hebraic culture prior to being Judaized and colonialism. So you really have to look into the very specific tribes and very deep into their culture to see it prior colonialism, or there's even a particular tribe, it escapes me, but how they just utterly refused all forms of colonialism, but their a lot of their customs were Hebraic a lot of ways in nature. So you have to really delve in, because a lot of the blanketing And this is why where a lot of Negro only guys will get this argumentation. Oh, the Igbo, they're saying that this, and they don't realize you have an Igbo running around calling himself a Gadite. He never called himself a Gadite before. He called himself a Gadite because when the white man came and made him converted him to Judaism, he said, "Yeah, you're a Jew, but you're a Northern Kingdom tribe. We're Judah and Levi. You guys are a Northern Kingdom tribe. So just claim one of those." A lot of people do misunderstand that.
Right. See, and that's why I like going into the book Hebrewisms of West Africa, right? So what's funny about that book is that, you know, everyone tries to use that to say, oh yeah, you know, the West Africans were black Jews and all this stuff. But it's funny because if you actually read that book, it doesn't say that. And yes, there were Hebrewisms found in West Africa, but not Hebrews. See, we always have this problem where we don't analyze the words, right? Everyone always tries to stress the whole Jewish thing. Oh, it's Jewish, it's like or as, but not Jew, it's ish, you know? Well, the same thing with ism, it's Hebrewisms, like, you know, the customs, but where's the actual Hebrews? And some of the customs were there, but then you got to realize that a lot of those customs just came from Canaan in general, of the land, you know? And a lot of the culture had spread through us because we were servants of Muslims. If you read in the book Hebrewisms of West Africa, in fact, if you don't mind, I'll bring up an excerpt from that. It tells us a lot, you know, and it's just that a lot of people don't pay attention. Now, let's see. Let me pull it up real quick. Let me see. Where did I put it? I sent everything to certain. I was trying to keep everything neat, but you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to read. This is from Hebrewisms of West Africa, and we're going to go to page 65. Right, and the title of the paragraph is called Sudanese Jews. I don't know if you could see that. See that?
Let me see. Yeah, I can see it.
Yes, Sudanese Jews, and you see Hebrewisms of West Africa, page 65. This is the PDF for the book. And it says, I'm going to a little paragraph if you don't mind. Well, it's like the whole page, but I'll read it fast. And it says, but let us return to Dupuis's narrative, where we read, quote, the Jews of Sudan are, according to my informers, divided into many large and small tribes, with whose names they are unacquainted. Their mode of life in some countries is pastoral, but the towns are filled with traders and artifices of that faith, right? So like I said, there's no denial that there's Hebrews in Africa, you know, but it's like, but we have to really be careful of who the Hebrews are. And let's continue. It says, who gain a subsistence at their several employments in the service of the Muslims, under whose government they live as vassals. This in reference to Mr. Bodwich's kingdom of Yehudi, I may be permitted to say, is the only state of society in which that oppressed nation is suffered to live. And the tribes, without security in their possessions, without public revenues or arms, are hourly exposed to insult and rapine from the blind zeal and active bigotry by which their lords are animated in these countries, and their lords are the Muslims. So basically they get mistreated by Muslims. They're like servants to Muslims. And the Muslims were the ones that were kind of taking everything everywhere into Africa, especially with the Muslim expansion of taking over North Africa, pushing into Spain, doing all that, right? And it says, and we were their vassals. So it says, the lands occupied by these people over a wide extent between Messina and Kabi. They are said to be mingled also with the upper Fula tribes eastward of Timbuktu. So there are some that are mixed with some of the tribes, right? So there are some Hebrews that are there. But let's continue. What does it say? And in many parts of Meroa, they have inheritances or are employed as artificers in the cities and towns. As we live among the heathens, said Bashal, so do the Jews in Meroa and in Fulani with our brethren. But they are not esteemed like us, for they are a people hardened in their sins and obstinate in infidelity. The anger of God is upon them, and therefore they are given to the rule of the Muslims until they shall become incorporated with the faithful. The tribes are not black. See, that's where it starts to get interesting. The tribes are not black, but of a color resembling the Arabs of the north. But what is more material, these Sudanic Jews are reported to have been the original inhabitants thereabout after the Arabs were acquainted with Central Africa. So, see, whence came these Jews, and what influence did they exert, if any, upon the Ashanti in bygone days? So it's showing that there's a difference between the Ashanti and the Jews that were in Sudan, and they're like, how did they get influenced by these people, right? And then we see, as in the people that were in Africa and seeing all this stuff, they said that the Jews were not black, but that they resembled the color of the Arabs of the north, which today we see them, people in Egypt, obviously we always tell them, oh, those are Arabs, those aren't real Egyptians, because the real Egyptians were black, right? Now, another little thing, because we brought up the whole, Ashanti thing, there's another excerpt from this book. And let me see if I can find it. Let's see. See, I have some on the ones of the islanders and stuff like that, and it talks about that. And then it talks about, goes into anthropology. This book's actually really good, man. If you check it out, it has a lot of interesting stuff. Right here. So see, it says, as noted, so this is chapter 2, the introduction for chapter 2. It says Jamaica and Obeah, right? Jamaica and Obeah. And it says, as noted in the introduction, Jamaica Obeah is directly traceable to the Ashanti, and the word itself is presumably derived from Obayifo, a witch. Captain Rattray tells us the word for witchcraft in Ashanti is Bayi, and for witch Obayifo and Bonsum, which are feminine and masculine respectively. The Bonsum appear to be much less common than the female Obayifo. J.G. Kristaller would seem to indicate the possible derivation of the word Abiyafo from Abiyen, which it itself is compounded of Ob and Ayin, a wizard, so that its strict meaning would come from Abi wizard. However, Captain Rattray, whose authority is paramount in these matters, insists that while the Ayin is also used, this word is really Fanti and not Ashanti, but as the Ashanti and Fanti are kindred people with a common origin, the ultimate root of both Bai and Ayin may be the same. In any case, the terms Obia, and Abia, it's all spelled different ways, same shit. There is no agreement to the spelling, is usually regarded to an adjective, while Obi or Abi is a noun. The description of Obi, transmitted some 150 years ago by agents of Jamaica to the lords of the Committee of the Privy Council in England, and by them sojourned their report on the slave trade, would trace the etymology of the word Obi to the Egyptian Ob, a serpent, thus making the practice ultimately a form of Egyptian ophilatry. However, one of the fragments of Sanchuniathon preserved for us by Eusebius of Caesarea, and then it goes to trail off. But see, as you can see, the Ashanti and their kindred tribes were messing around with stuff that came from Egypt. And then if you read, I have other excerpts from this book. It talks about how, because of their culture, because they know where they got them from, because they trace their stuff back, that these people could be no other people than the Egyptians and the Canaanites. And I'll get that real fast quote for you. It's actually smaller. Right here, John Bathurst Dean, John Bathurst Dean, this is page 50, after claiming to connect the Obeah of the West Indies with the ophiatry of the Phoenicians and Egyptians, concludes, hence there is room for one of these two conclusions, that the Gold Coast was either colonized from Canaan or from Egypt, the former of which is perhaps the more probable, from the greater faculty afforded to the Phoenicians by navigation than to the Egyptians, who had have to cross the deserts and overcome many other physical difficulties in their distant march. So we see that even back then, people were making this connection. Well, like, there's only two really possible two possible explanations of who these people are. One of them is either Phoenicians or one of them is either Egyptians, and we know the Phoenicians were Canaanites. So, we see these connections over and over about how the people of West Africa still practice the same things that they did in Africa, and those things came from Egypt and from Phoenicia. And we know that the Phoenicians were Canaanites, and they were scattered. They were in Carthage, right? They were in North Africa. They fled there from the time of Joshua. And then they also went further down over Carthage. They went and settled fucking West Africa. And that's where a lot of the things come from now. There's even a place still called Jebu, You know, so that's a lot of interesting things if you want to take from there or whatnot. Sorry to ramble on for so long.
No, that's good. That's good information. But my question would be, didn't Israel have a serial problem with following the practices of the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, etc.?
Yes, we did.
So if we see those customs being followed by certain people, that doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
that means they still could. They could have been us, of course, in all forms of evil. Also, right?
Right.
I got
Right. Yeah, if you want to put that.
I got like a quick off, well, not off topic, but on topic. What
Okay.
about like the Canaanite practices that we see certain peoples are like the Amazon practicing? Would we say, would
Right.
you say those are Canaanites or those were just Israel going off, quote unquote?
Yeah, well, see, a lot of them are mixed, you know what I mean, with the Hamits, because we know the Olmecs who came over here came from Phoenicia. You know, they came from Carthage. They were the Canaanites. And that's where you get a lot of the mixing, and that's why a lot of the brothers are darker nowadays, is because the Canaanites came here and they actually took over the Mayan Empire, which the Maya, the Quiche Maya, were the Israelites that came from Arsareth, while the Colchin Maya, right? It's a different type of Maya. Those, it's because it means like an immigrant, like a person that wasn't there normally. They landed in the island of Tabasco first, and then they, you know, started mingling with us and trading because they were Canaanites were always known for trading shit and buying and selling and whatnot. And so we started doing that, and then they ended up mixing with us. We ended up amalgamating, and then they ended up taking over our empire from us. And when the Aztec, you know, strolled on in, they kind of took it from them. But then you had bitter Olmecs that came later on with the conquistadors, you know, and they kind of sold out. They kind of like took over, you know, they were like fuck the Israelites, and they sold out us to the white man, you know what I mean? So there's just like a bunch of history going on, and a lot of that you can find in the book Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids. It's I know it's a funny book and you wouldn't think, but it's actually a really well sourced book. It's well documented. You know what I mean? A lot of good original sources and stuff. There's even um, a thing in there that talks about an original letter that was written by the Maya themselves saying that they are Israelites. So this book has a lot of good information in it. Right here, it's on page 79. In a manuscript written in Quiche in 1554 by several Maya Indians, its Spanish translator, Padre Dionisio Jose Conay, had this to say, quote, "It is supposed in the manuscript that the three great Quiche nations mentioned in particular are descendants of the 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel, whom Salmanazar reduced to perpetual captivity, and who, finding themselves in the confines of Assyria, decided to emigrate. The actual text ran, quote, these then were the three nations of Quiche, and they came from where the sun rises, descendants of Israel, of the same language and of the same customs." So, you know, it's got a lot of cool stuff like that in it. And it actually talks a lot about how the Olmec came later. You know, the Mayan were actually the first ones here, and then the Olmec came after. And in fact, Olmec is actually technically our people mixed with their people. You know what I mean? Like that's technically what the Olmec were. Um, but you know, so we picked up a lot of their customs and stuff like that. And granted, you know, but see, then I got to point out the thing is that it's the other way around, really. In Africa, it's not the fact that African, you know, Israelites picked up African customs, but that those Africans picked up some Hebrew customs, the same way we picked up our customs from them in the Americas. And the reason why I say the whole thing about West Africans, you know, and I'm sure it was going to head to this eventually, is the curses, right? That's like one of our main things, and that's what always One West stresses, and that's been the whole fucking, you know, linchpin and everything is the curses, right? And everybody has to say, oh, you have to suffer all the curses to be an Israelite and blah, 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 and all this stuff, right? Well, if we really examine the West Africans, they didn't suffer all the curses. They didn't even suffer half of them, you know? And for one example of that is the curse of where it says that they would slaughter our cattle before our eyes and we wouldn't get to fucking partake in the meat or have any of it. That there would be a massive genocide on our cattle and there was nothing we could do about it. And that never happened in Africa. You know, food is scarce enough as it is. Why would they go and slaughter all of their food? You know what I mean? If they did have cattle down there, it was probably just taken. you know, but we look at the Americas and we still have old videos, black and white videos of them completely genociding all of the buffalo that were in America. Mounds as taller than fucking buildings and shit, dude, of just giant buffalo skulls just piled up to the fucking sky, man. You know what I mean? Trying to starve us out, trying to take us down. You know what I mean? So we can see that curse happening here, but we can't see that curse happening there. You know what I mean? And then you can't say that it happened here for the West African slaves because they didn't have nothing when they were here. You get what I'm saying? They got here having nothing. They got stripped of everything. They were fucking treated worse than everybody. You know, the lowest on the totem pole of the slaves. And they didn't suffer any of that. One of the other curses is that a nation from afar would come into your land, and the stranger that is among you would become the head and you would become the tail. Well, if we're to go with the written narrative now, Israelites were strangers in Africa. That was never their land. You know, so how can a stranger be over to him? What about the original people? But we can see in America how we had this land here. The stranger came here and overtook us, and now these dudes are the head, and now we're the tail. They lend to us, but we don't lend to them. You know what I mean? And in Africa, that didn't happen. It was, if you go with the written narrative of them being Israelites, those are already immigrants that had fled from Jerusalem, went to West Africa, were living as strangers there, and then were sold up and then brought over here and had nothing, no slaughtering of cattle, no taking of anything. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of this stuff didn't happen. There's no records of it. You know, one of the other little curses that people forget, or I guess one of the prophecies, and it obviously had to happen, was in Psalms 138, I think it is, right? That's the song about Babylon, right? The rivers of Babylon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like Psalm 137 or 138, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, though, right? By the rivers of Babylon, everybody knows that. And we know that, like we were saying, that the new day, the modern day Babylon, the virgin daughter of Babylon, is America, right? And then it also mentions, oh, well, the daughters of Esau. In fact, you know what? Let me grab that real fast, and I'll even read it out of the I'll even read it out of your guys' stuff.
Okay. It's cool that you're saying that because I got the JPS pulled up.
Oh, dude. Oh, cool. Well, that is awesome. Where's mine? Okay, so yeah, well, you know, we go to Psalms and it says what about the children of Edom, right? And it says, don't forget to punish them, right? Because of what they said, raise it to our temple, right? And they went in, because if we read in the book of, you know, in the Apocrypha, in the book of First Esdras, it talks about how the Edomites were actually the ones that burned down the temple and not the Babylonians. The Babylonians came in and fucked shit up for sure, but they weren't the ones that burned the temple.
But they didn't just want to burn the temple.
Right. The Edomites were the ones that were like, fuck these guys, and they raised our shit to the ground, you know. That's why it says when we were trying to flee, you know, every time we try to flee from the oppressor, they cut us off, you know what I mean? They try to wheel their way around and fucking chop us down and shit. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, it was Psalm 137, right? And it says, well, let's go to verse 7, right? Psalms 137 and 7. I'm in the JPS. It says, remember, O Yahweh, against the children of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, thou art to be destroyed. And we know that's America, and we know that Esau is equated with America. Happy shall he be that repayeth thee, as thou hast served us. So we know that people are going to do to them what they did to us. So this is something that is known to have happened to Israelites, that they did to us specifically, that you know, that's going to happen to them. And what does the next verse say? That is, happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the rock. Right? Now, we have records, you know, even from the time of the Spaniards of, in fact, I have a book, is it by me? Let me see. I have a book called American Holocaust. American Holocaust, right? From Oxford University, right? Oxford University Press. And this book is actually really good information about what happened in the Americas, man. They played a shuffleboard game with us. They genocided us. Even though we still have a decent amount of number of people here, it's nothing compared to what it was. 95% genocide from tip to tip. You know what I mean? From how we used to say it in our land, from Dan to Beersheba, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So let's see. Oh, right here. Okay, so this is like in the book, and it has portraits that they had of the atrocities that the conquistadors made against us. Right now, this is in the book American Holocaust from Oxford, and it is on page 147, 148. And I'm going to read the little excerpt underneath the little photo here, and then I'll show it again. It says, the Spaniards took babies from their mothers' breasts, grabbing them by the feet and smashing their heads against rocks. Is that not the same exact fucking thing we just read in the Psalms? It says they built a long gibbet low enough for the toes to touch the ground and prevent strangling, and they hanged 13 natives at a time in honor of Christ our Savior and the 12 apostles. Then straw was wrapped around their torn bodies, and they were burned alive. And here's a photo of that. You could see the Spaniard grabbing the baby by his feet, going to dash his head against the rocks. And then there's the gibbet, the gallows, showing how they would hang us and burn us alive.
Yeah, I understand, because like you're talking about dealing with the curses. The curses are important. Right. We emphasize the curses. Right. That's one of, like, especially when we're street teaching, that's going to be always, like you said, the linchpin where we're talking about you Negro, you Latino, you guys are under the curses, etc. Right. A lot of people neglect the fact that what happened to Latinos, and I've pointed out to people, especially about verse 49. I'll read it, Deuteronomy 28 and 49 at JPS. Yahweh will bring a nation against thee from far from the end of the earth as a vulture swoopeth down, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance that shall not regard a person of old, nor show favor to the young, and he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle, like you were going into. So that's very key to what took place to Latinos. I want to point out also, though, verse 46, right, when it says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. With the exile of the northern kingdom and the north coming to Arsareth, and settling here in the Americas, and then you had the southern kingdom remain in Israel in large part. A lot of these aspects, because we know that the curses are an ever happening thing. When we sin against the Most High, we do things displeasing to Yahweh. He brings people against us, or he brings us under these curses. So the southern kingdom suffered a lot of, especially those things, when the southern kingdom had their own land. But then once finally Yahweh says, all right, to hell with y'all got to get up out of here. The southern kingdom is essentially lived in exile and really had no place to call home. But it's important and good to bring out sources like the sources you're bringing out for guys who want to gainsay the validity of the indigenous or Amerindian or Hispanic or Latino, whatever you want to call it, people, because you clearly see, like you just clearly demonstrated, it's clearly historic that every single thing that was said to happen, it certainly happened to the indigenous peoples of the America. There's no way around it. Like you said, people being hung. People will say, "Oh, well, where were the Latinos hung?" It's right there. You see what I'm saying? So and there's even more modern pictures of Mexicans being hung in California. I thought only hangings happened in the South. No, in California, people was being hung. So all this stuff, it's important information, and I'm glad we're talking about this, as well as the conversation I had. I don't know if you caught it the other day with the brother Nazar, but it's important to have this because for so long has the emphasis been on black being Israel, et cetera, at the neglect and to the detriment of the fact that we also have all these indigenous people. Now you have this Negro only ideology, et cetera. This super Africanized Israelite ideology, et cetera. And it's at a total neglect of so much history like that. I mean, that's simple. What you went into is a powerful source, but also it's not something deep. You didn't have to pay $27,000 to get that book. You see what I'm saying? We can get on Amazon.
Yeah, I found it at a used bookstore for like $5.
Used bookstore, $5. Here it is, right in front of you, and you just don't want to see it. You just don't want to look at it. You just want to look at Africa, and a lot of that has been because you've been, certain brothers have this just cleave to the teeth, just like the teeth of Egypt. You know, God just wanted to cleave to it. You see what I'm saying? And the first thing we did when Moses was going too long was bring in Egyptian idols and begin to worship them. You see what I'm saying? Because it feels good, or you've been told that, or, you know, whatever. And granted, some of these people, who knows, could be, of course, even Hamitic as well. But I think a lot of us are just guys who've been lost and misled of Israel, unfortunately. And, you know, also when we deal with the enmity between the north and the south, Judah shall no longer vex Ephraim, Ephraim shall no longer envy Judah. We have to, you know, factor that in as well. And from the time when we really began to function like two different nations, when we read in the history, like we really began to function like two different nations. We have the north going and teaming up with Assyria. We want to go and team up with Assyria and come against Judah. You see what I'm saying? Even the time, you know, in the historical account when you had the northern kingdom take a gang of Judites into slavery, and then it took the elders to come out and say, "Nah, we already done did enough. We can't we can't do this." You know what I'm saying? That this is too much. So we even have that. So it's a lot, man. It's a lot of history and things on surface level, and that's kind of you know, what I hope people are getting from this, dealing with the sources in the scriptures that we're going into. It's a lot that we got to deal with. And it's not just so simple as, oh, you're black, you're an Israelite.
Right. See, and one thing I wanted to bring up, and see, this is the reason why I say that there's such a problem with all this. And like I said, that it's, and I know you guys think that the majority, you know, of West African slaves or Negroes in America, let's just say in general, are Israelites. But see, I would say that it's more along the lines of what the mystery schools teach through DNA, right? Because we know that DNA isn't always, it's faulty and the shit's whatever. But see, the thing is that it's a system that they use that's a part of their religion in a way, of their evolutionary system that they use and that they teach to everyone. And we know that everything these people teach us have a hidden meaning to it. It's all esoteric, right? We get this exoteric, oh, you're this DNA, you're that, or you came from Africa and you did this and they traveled here and blah, blah, blah. But when we break it all down and when we look at it on a deeper level, because remember, they hide all these things, we start to see this hidden teaching that they have within it. And they're telling you things through that, you know, because I actually went through and broke down all the words for, you know, they give this list of, you know, how we came from Africa. Humans started off and, you know, we got to Homo sapien, but before that there was Homo this and Homo that, right? And they give you a little chart, blah, blah, blah. Well, I went through and broke down all the names in Latin, and it turns out that they're actually telling you a fucking story with those names. It's not just, you know, random shit that they threw out there. They're actually speaking to each other, because most people don't know Latin. And if you know anything about the mystery schools, they love Latin. It's like their language of witchcraft. They use it. They show it in a lot of movies and stuff. Right. And so that's what they like to use, right? And so, you know, we start to see these things. And like I said, so according to, you know, Esau and his exoteric, right, he says that about 75% of so-called African Americans, right, are E-type haplogroup blood, which if you go by their little thing, that's all African blood. So they're saying that about 25% to 30% of these African Americans are not African American, but they're labeled that way, which is kind of the same thing that I'm trying to bring to everybody's attention, is that these people aren't, like, I know everybody has this thing, but like, we were here before then. Like, yes, Negroes did go through those curses here in the before Columbus, you know what I mean? We were already here. People, kinds of documentation to show it. There's all kinds of old art and all kinds of stuff that can show this. So that's what I'm trying to bring out. Like, Ephraim was known as the silly dove. Ephraim was the cake unturned. Ephraim was the one mixed among the nations. Ephraim and Manasseh were the ones that started out half Egyptian, you know? But see, that's another thing that bringing forth, is because the narrative that's spun now is that Israel started off black and then turned lighter through mixing and rape and all this shit. When really, if you take a look and examine it, it's, I don't want to say reversed, you know, because I'm not trying to talk shit or anything, but it's actually the opposite. It's Israel started out as a lighter color, and then through mixing, you know, especially started off in Egypt when Ephraim and Manasseh came out half Egyptian. And then, you know, further on, especially, you know, like I said, before we even came to the Americas, we were mixing with Hamites, and that's how the darkness came. That's how the different phenotypes came. That's how all this different stuff came to be. And the narrative is spun that way. And that's another reason why I wanted to kind of bring something up is the propaganda that's being pushed in the community. I have caught it multiple, like, attempts to push propaganda within the community. One of them is, and I know everybody clings to it, but the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, right? Everybody usually has a compact one or whatever. But in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, right, it talks, everybody always goes to the ham definition, right? Everybody always jumps to it and they fucking run to it and they're like, oh, see, that's saying that Negroes aren't fucking Hamites, right? So they're probably saying that they're Israelites. This is the conclusion that everybody jumps to. When they don't understand that Zondervan, right, the people who publish that, the ideology that comes behind that definition is actually based on what they call the Hamitic hypothesis, right? Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah. Basically, that none of the African people are Hamites at all.
Exactly. That no Africans, no sub-Saharan Negroid type Africans are Hamites, but that the dark-skinned Caucasoids are actually the ones who are Hamites, because there's no way that black people could have come up with such sophisticated culture in Egypt and in Kush and throughout the Africas that we see that a lot of the Hamites did, because obviously Hamites were the first ones to start civilization. Kush started civilization in Sumer, you know what I mean, with Nimrod. So, and what's crazy about that is I have a couple of instances to back this if people want to go take a look at this. Because it blew my fucking mind when I saw it, so I wouldn't blow everybody else's. And let me get that for you guys. And where's the link? Okay, so the first one that we can take a look at, right, is from the King James Version commentary from the Zondervan. Zondervan King James Version commentary. So I'm going to click on the link. I'm going to go to the link, right? And you can see, the King James Version commentary and all that, right? So within this book, what's going on with the Hamites, like their whole little thing, or not the Hamites, sorry, but it does. It discusses like who the people are, right? Because every Bible, a lot of commentaries try to say, oh, well, Shem is these people, Ham is these people, Japheth is these people, right? A lot of them try to say Japheth is the white man, which is retarded. Which I saw your guys, Haka's little debate with Nasi again. I can't believe you guys even gave that guy a second chance.
Yeah, I told him that.
You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty funny. But okay, so let me go to it, because I did the link, but for some reason the link didn't actually keep the fucking goddamn shit that I had pulled up for it. But it's okay, because I can find it real fast. So let's see, Zondervan, the King James one. Sorry about that, Salak. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Actually, you know what? We can get this one first since we're already here. This is the. Hold on. God damn it! I hate when shit like this happens. Okay, here we go. Because it's also in the NIV study Bible from the Zondervan. It's also there too, and here I actually have a screenshot of it that you can see, and it comes from the NIV from Zondervan Publishing, right? So it says, and I'm going to read the footnote, right, for Canaanites. It's the servants of servants. It says, servant of servants, Joshua's subjection of the Gibeonites is one of the fulfillments, right? So this is kind of like what you guys even already slaves, you know what I mean? But what's funny is that it's, only one of the fulfillments, and it was only a couple of people. Most of the Canaanites had already fled by that time. But let's continue reading. It says, Noah's prophecy cannot be used to justify the enslavement of blacks, right? Which is like the same thing that everybody says now. Like, oh, no, that's not black people. Since those who cursed were Canaanites, who were Caucasians. And I don't know if you can see that on the bottom, but it says that they were Caucasians.
Yeah, I see that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's, you know, from one of the KJV. So the other one is in, like I was saying before, the King James Version commentary. So
There's
Zondervan King James.
what a lot of people don't know is for a long time, a lot of white, what they would call white supremacists or racist white science and historians, literally believe that black people are like evolved apes. So that whole evolution thing, people hear evolution like everybody. There was a point where literally they only believe black people come from apes. Everyone else don't. Just black people come from apes. So that's basically, that goes into what the brother's going into when they say that Hamites aren't even black. Like, you have certain white people that'll say, okay, you guys are Hamites, you guys are Canaanites, so we can enslave you or whatever. But then there's literally white people say, nah, y'all not even that. Y'all are just some apes. I've actually had a white girl literally tell me, like, don't you guys come from apes? Like,
See, and that's what's fucked up. And that's the thing that I'm trying to point out is that, you know, I know a lot of brothers don't like that and it's uncomfortable and stuff, but technically that's what's being done by pushing the Zondervan definition, is pushing the Hamitic hypothesis, is actually pushing white supremacy. So you see how Esau has gotten us to where we're pushing white supremacy masked as black supremacy, technically. See, and this is sort of the problems that I was trying to bring out. Oh man, I wish fucking shit would just pop up. But yeah, the King James version, and then also it's in the let me get that for you. And I have all the stuff there, it just wasn't popping. The Zondervan NIV Study Bible, and also the Zondervan Encyclopedia of the Bible, Volume 5. And those all state like what you were just saying now about how the Hamitic hypothesis was that, you know, Hamites, black people, you know, sub-Saharan African, ancient black Egyptians and all that, they weren't really Hamites. That these darker Caucasians are Hamites, and that, you know, the black people, supposedly black people, don't even come from fucking Adam. Or if they do come from Adam, they come from Cain, right? That this cursed seed of Cain that was cursed to be black and all this shit. But that's the same thing. Is they say, oh, he's not even from Adam. In fact, there's even a book that people can look up. It's called The Negro, a Beast.
Yeah.
That's the name of the book. Yeah, right. And that's what that whole book is based off of. Is this guy trying to prove that that, you know, all these black Africans aren't even from Adam, and that they're just like walking, talking fucking beasts and shit like that. It's total fucking horrible shit. You know what I mean? It's just as bad as what the Talmud says. You know what I mean? So that's like part of the problem. That's part of the shit that I wanted to bring to the forefront and stuff, is that type of stuff that's being pushed. Like, why are we gonna sit there and try to subscribe and push this Hamitic hypothesis based definition when that's not our goal? Our goal is to show, right? If the goal is to show that Negroes don't come from Hamites, as in like the people labeled Negroes, and how everybody spins it now, if that's really the narrative, then let's show it. You know what I mean? But the thing is that it's not. We have constant one after the other of the Zondervan Bible teachings and their commentaries and shit talking about how these Hamites are Caucasians. You know what I mean? And we know that's all a bunch of fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? And so it's not, can't find it because I have the links to the things, and then I can get it for people later. But I actually have the screenshots from those themselves, and I could just read real fast. You know, and it's sad. And see, and then another thing is, it's not even just that. You know, we've got purposely altered images. You know, like look at this one. This was posted by that dude Joshua, right? This is supposed to be the Hebrews on the walls of Egypt, right? Oh, nice. Look how black that brother is, right? Well, the original painting is right here, and the brother's fucking yellow. You know, there's that Egyptian. The dude in the other picture is darker than that Egyptian. You know what I mean? So we have, and he tried to pass this off as real. And you can ask Ayash and all those brothers, because I fucking destroyed them on the boards. But we have blatant, like, misleading of information, you know? Huh?
Now, because to me, the thing about that is it can kind of go both ways, because one can say, okay, this is that. Then somebody could say, well, over the course of X amount of years, it may have gotten weathered, so then it looks lighter. Or Esau came in and whitewashed. So that's kind of the thing with me with sometimes with imagery is how, you know, how do we know for sure what's occurred to that image? You know what I mean? Over the course of time.
Well, see, and then I would bring up the fact that you brought up is that you can see the actual weathering of paint chipped off, you know, and then why aren't the Egyptians lighter? Like that's the same color as the Egyptians are portrayed through all their things. So if they were going to lighten the Hebrews, why didn't they lighten the Egyptians? And why can you see the same weathering on both of them?
Yeah, well,
you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
see, that's my thing is that people try to keep scapegoating. People keep trying to scapegoat image whitewash thing, but then they'll turn around and go to the icons of Russia and shit as if those weren't altered. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, where is the line drawn? You know what I mean? Where is this? Where's archaeology not accepted and where is it accepted?
Yeah, you know, we got to take, sometimes we got, you know, anything extra, quote unquote, extra biblical, you know, you take with a grain of salt, but information is good. But the thing is also, like, this is what also has to be understood. If we see that picture right there, right, that you just showed, and we see the color of the brother that's in that picture, we know we got families, right? We seen and been around all kind of indigenous people, so-called Negroes brought to America, people in the hood, etc., right? And we know any one of us got people that color that range from that color, from dark to light. You know, we're all these various shades. We're not like this limited. So it's problematic when brothers are coming with this only dark-skinned Negro ideology, when we know in any nigger, get any Negro off the street and go, okay, well, let me see a picture of your family reunion. Is everybody look like Wesley Snipes at your family reunion? You see what I'm saying? No. And even even like in the islands, right? Because even like if you, let's take a look at Haiti, right? My family goes back to Haiti. People will take a look at Haiti and say that you know, because Haitians probably have mingled with Esau the least out of everybody, right? Or there's a very small portion that really is mingled with Esau. But even then, there's a vast array of what's the word I'm looking for? Variants as far as skin tone, phenotype, etc. Just amongst that population. So people are trying to just make it look like there's just supposed to be this Sudanese family tree picture, and we all know if there's going to be a variance.
Right. See, and I agree, and there is variations because we have, you know. See, that's the thing is that, you know, I know brothers don't like it because every time I bring it up, everybody wants to shun it. But the walls of Egypt give us a great example of not only what we look like, but what the Cushites look like, what the Egyptians look like, and all this stuff, right? And they do portray darker Israelites on the wall. But see, the thing is that they're in the minimal. They're in the minority. As we see, here's another unaltered one, and they're the same color as that brother before. You know, so we see, you know, from painting after painting on the walls that haven't been altered. We have a shoe. These are bottoms of sandals of the Pharaoh. One is a Cushite, one is an Israelite. You can obviously tell which one is which. We have an old staff that was found from Pharaoh, unaltered, still original paint and stuff. And you see, you know, the Cushite there, and then you see the Israelite there. So you see that, you know, image after image after image after image after image, and it's like, okay, well, did they fucking whitewash all of goddamn Egypt, you know? And so here, you know, even in the textbooks, they show the original paintings. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying is like, and I understand people say the weathering and whatnot, but you see time and time again, the one in the middle looks like all the other Asiatics. You see him with the darker color behind him. He's dark. Why didn't they alter him? It all has the same weathering. And then we have the Egyptians' writings themselves that talk about us, right? And how did they describe us? Like we have right here, the Amu, right? They called our people the Amu. And this information could have helped us. I know people are taking this as like color bashing. No, it's not even that. Ignore the color. This shit could have helped us in the war against Kemet. But everybody was fucking ignoring me and not fucking taking my shit to the forefront that I was trying to bring out. But this shit could have helped. You know, everybody was having all this trouble proving Israelites in fucking Egypt, and everybody can deny it all they want, but everybody was struggling like fuck. When all they had to do was research the Amu. And that gives the whole history of the Hebrews in Egypt, or the Shasu. There's
Yeah,
even Yahweh's name. Yeah, the Shasu. Right, the Shasu, right, which it has the Tetragrammaton, right? That's like you said, that stuff like that. You know what I mean? Okay, so this is from, you know, the inscription of Neshor, right? It's 26th dynasty. So this is Egyptian writing, so you can look it up and stuff, and it'll pop right up. And it's a screenshot straight from the book. There's the text right there, and it says Amu, right? So it's giving a definition of Amu, means people, an Egyptian word which was applied indiscriminately to the yellow race or of any of the Shemitic nations or tribes with whom they were at war. It was derived from the Shemitic noun which means people also, right? And if you look up our Hebrew word, which is ayan and my, the and the ma, right? The ayan and the ma, it means people, right? And then Amu, right? Because the suffix is the wow. That means his. It gives a possession, right? So Amal means his people, which is the his is referring to Yahweh, because obviously the Pharaoh had interaction with us before, from when Abraham had went down there for the famine, and they knew about our God because Yahweh cursed Pharaoh's house, right? And so we see that they knew about us. They called us the Amu, right? And we were known as the yellow race. And then you have the Shasu. The definition of Shasu was a generic term applied to the Arab or Bedouin tribes who inhabited the desert between Syria and the northeastern front of Egypt. They were a great source of annoyance to the Egyptian kings, right? And it says that, and if you look up the Shasu, because they use it as a general term for, and it's actually semi-nomadic is actually what it means. But they actually use the term for a lot of a couple of different Shemitic tribes, but mainly it was used for us because you have the Shasu of Reuben, of like over there in the Reuben, they called them Shasu. They called the East, basically the Eastern tribes. You know how we had the tribes on the Eastern front, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh?
yeah,
Those were technically the ones that were known as like the Shasu. And then the rest of us were known as the Amu. So if you look at, and the term that they use now in academics is Asiatic, right? So if you look up Asiatics in ancient Egypt, boom, it'll pop it up, and all this shit will pop up, and it'll give you all the information of where we were. Dude, the Exodus is found in there. We have the dates for the Exodus and all that shit. We could have shown them the Pharaoh. They kept asking, what Pharaoh? Everybody kept, I don't know. But we could have showed them the Pharaoh, the fact that they're still missing his body. We could have showed him the plagues that were happening, that that Pharaoh's son's the one that his firstborn son died before him, before he was dead, because Pharaoh died in the Red Sea. But his second son that survived him, his body was covered in lesions and like a bunch of, his body was like damaged, you know, it was very heavily damaged, and it came from the plagues. Right. So we have all this information that we could have found, man, if everybody would have just, you know, everybody was looking for the word Hebrew in fucking Egypt. Well, they didn't call us Hebrew. They called us Amu.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the type of
Israel is not
right
until we leave, and then we're on the scene, and then we conquest Canaan. Now we're the Israelites. You see what I'm saying? We're just
right.
Just like in America, you're just whatever I want to call you. You're niggers and spics, or now black and now African American and Latin American, whatever the hell I want to call you. You're not, you know, right. Chinese people, you know, they don't have that problem. They have a nation as strong as they can. But when you don't have nothing, you're just whatever I want you to be.
Right. And see, and that's what they were doing to us back in Egypt as well. They were just calling us, oh, his people. Those are just his people. You know what I mean? Just those guys, you know. And but you know, if you look up the Amu and the Shasu and you check out the images of Egypt, you'll see that and see and the whole color thing, because that's kind of what it went to. But the reason why I was pulling up, like I said, was the whole thing about the propaganda, because like I said, that there's images that are being pushed that are said that are Hebrews and aren't. And this is one of them, same guy, Joshua, right? And he tried to use this image, right, talking shit about me, saying blah blah blah. He doesn't know those are Hebrews, and we see that there's like a really dark black guy in the over there.
Yeah,
and
no, that's
like
different. That's different nation. Yeah, I know that
actually,
dealing with the Kemetic dudes.
Actually, it's just one nation, and it was the Hittites, because that's the Battle of Kadesh. And
Oh,
if you look that up, it was the Hittites. The Hittites had actually taken Kadesh. Well, the Egyptians took it, and they had it like as a vassal, state or whatever. And then the Hittites took it over, and then Ramses II, I believe that's who it was, went into the Battle of Kadesh. And you could look that up. You can find that information in the Encyclopedia Britannica. It says that I did a post about it the other day. That it was actually the Hittites that they were fighting. So we have stuff like that, or another good instance of that, right? Which is very heavily used. This is used throughout. Everyone knows this image, and people still push it to this day. And if you give me 1 second, I'll find it. And it's the Tomb of Rekhmir. That's what it's called, right? The Tomb of Rekhmir. And people always try to use this to say that the Hebrews were black in Egypt. Oh, look, they're making straw bricks and blah 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 and all this shit, right? But the thing is that they're not even Hebrews, bro. Like the Tomb of Rekhmir was constructed after we left fucking Egypt, and so all those people that are building it are in fact Egyptians.
is that the one that the pictorial history of Egypt on the first page?
Which one?
No, the pictorial history of Israel. So like, it's a red book. I think I left it in California, but it's called the pictorial history of Israel. And the first page is the one like where they just have on these like diaper looking things. Let me see. That one, yeah, that one.
See, that's the Tomb of Rekhmir. That's what everybody always goes to, right? Oh, look, man, look at them. They're making the bricks. Oh, man, that's us building the pyramids. But if you look up that tomb, it wasn't constructed till around 1450 BCE, and we had already left Egypt by that period.
What was the we left Egypt?
Huh?
What would be the year that we left Egypt, just according to your research?
Around circa 1500 BC.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Tutmos the First is the Exodus pharaoh.
Okay.
Tutmos the First. They can't find his body. He was one of the only Egyptian pharaohs that can't find his body. They thought they had it. See, that's the thing. Egyptian, the Kemetic cats, and it makes you wonder, why do these guys cling to Egypt so bad, right? But anyways, these Philistines, right? They come at you and they're like, oh well, we have the pharaoh's bodies and blah 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 and all this shit, right? And but they failed to mention that they did a recent thing about that back in 2014, and it hasn't changed since then. And you could look it up. It's a big old thing that they came out and admitted that they thought they had Tutmosis' first body, but they actually don't. That it was mislabeled, and that they actually found Hatshepsut's body, which Hatshepsut was his daughter. That's pretty. And Tutmos the second, which wasn't his firstborn son. Tutmos the first actually had a firstborn son who died. And then his second son is who took over after him, Tutmos II. Tutmos II was the one who suffered from the bodily fucking injuries and all that shit. And then also Tutmos III, his son, talked about how there was no more Asiatics in Egypt at that time. Hatshepsut mentions how there was no more Asiatics at that time. You could even read about the persecution of us. It's even recorded in the records of them killing our babies, man. And that happened in the time of Kamos. Khamose, Kamos, right? The reign of Kamos. That talks about it. Their records at that time talk about a lot of the events that were happening. And then what I showed you earlier about when we first got into the discussion about the propaganda about the dark skin one, and then I showed you the light skin one and stuff, that comes from the tomb of Beni Hassan, right? Beni Hassan, we should all be familiar with that. And that's the portrayal of us migrating into Egypt, and it shows our people in a caravan heading into Egypt. And we were called what everybody always goes to Hyksos, right?
Yeah, that's nonsense. It's crazy because I remember the first time I heard the Hyksos thing, I already wasn't.
Right.
That's before I even started looking into it. I was, and then you see the Hyksos too, and that's another problem. If we're going to purport that for a lot of brothers who propagate the Hyksos narrative, a lot of Negro only guys do it. You take a look at the Hyksos, they don't look Negro at all.
Right. And see, and the Hyksos were us, but the thing is that this is what kills me, man. Those Kemet cats fucking kill me, dude. Okay, so check this out. Check out their logic, right? So they'll try to say, oh, the Hyksos, you guys were a bunch of fucking savage white people that came in, because, you know, everybody that's not black is white to these people. Yeah, so, you know, even though we were yellow and brown. So they're like, oh, well, you know, you people came in and you took over Egypt. You guys were assholes and we kicked you out. You guys don't fit the Exodus narrative, nothing, right? Well, then you got to question them. You know, nobody questioned them. They didn't question them of, well, where does this narrative come from? Where did you get that fucking history from, right? There's only one legitimate source for that history that they'll go to, because the rest of them are Christian sources. And they're based off that source. And that source is Manethos, right? Here's the kicker. Manethos' writings, the only manuscripts of Manethos that survived, the oldest manuscripts of Manethos that survived, come from Josephus. So if they're going to fucking go with that Manethos narrative, then they're going to have to accept Josephus, because that's where the manuscripts come from. And if you accept Josephus, Josephus rips Manethos a new fucking asshole using his own writing, showing that he was a goddamn liar and he spun the narrative. And if you want to throw out Josephus, then we could throw out Josephus, but then there goes your Manethos, and what the fuck are you talking about? Some Hyksos shit.
Now you have no source.
Right. And people, dude, we could have been laying blows to these motherfuckers that whole time, man, but nobody wanted to fucking take me off the bench. But, you know, now that we have the information, we can now begin to clear up all of these facts that, you know, the Kemetic community pushed a lot of our people away from the Hebrew movement because of that shit. You know, now we can come at them and be like, boom, Exodus Pharaoh. Boom, there's the narrative in the Egyptian writings. Boom, fuck your Manethos and your Hyksos bullshit. You know what I mean? Just start ragging them, dude. That's what I've been doing this whole time. I've just been fucking bombing them, dude. And they've got nothing. They come up with nothing. And then if they really want to get smart, just bring up the ancient Egyptian mystery schools. Yeah, then they really go fucking dumb.
That's what I like to do. I've seen everybody having a historical argument, which is why that's why when I talked to Jabari last year, I said I wanted to have a priest. You say you're a Kemetic priest. I want to have a priesthood board. Let's do.
I'd love to get at Jabari, man.
But he deviated. He didn't want to have a priest. He acted like he wanted, but he totally deviated. You don't even want, because I don't even, number one, think you even understand your priesthood. So I would love to have a priesthood debate, and then also because you got to watch the narratives that they play. So first they'll say there was no such thing as Israelites. Then they'll say, okay, well, Moses was learning the way of the Egyptians, and he was an Egyptian priest, and this and that, right? Okay, cool. So if our patriarch and the leader who led us out and gave us all this information was a part of an elite priesthood, as you say, that the common Egyptian couldn't have, then that puts us from the gate of existing as a nation light years above your entire nation in understanding. Period. You see what I'm saying? So even their own narratives work against them. You see what I'm saying?
Right, and I totally agree, man. And I kind of like your idea, man. And I wish we could get something together like that. Maybe we could do something like you said, Hebrew priest versus Kemetic priests. You know what I mean? And let's get that. Let's get the priesthoods going. You know what I mean? Everybody talks all this shit, man. Well, where the fuck you at, Jabari? How come you're not fucking busting out the real priest shit? How come you're not talking about the esoteric knowledge? Same thing with goddamn what's the other guy's name that they all respect? Mfundishi? Yeah, where the fuck's that guy at? You know what I mean? Yeah, so let's get Mfundishi. Let's get fucking your old boy fucking Jabari. What about fucking Polite and shit? You're supposed to be a Mason and all that shit. You're supposed to know the mysteries of fucking Kemet and all that shit. Well, where's your esoteric shit? What about Shaka, huh? Where are all you priests at teaching your people the fucking hidden meanings of fucking Kemet, dude? And here's another point to that you were bringing up that I would like to polish off, is that you were saying about how, okay, well, if Moses, right, if Moses learned from the Egyptians, I'll even go further back. If Abraham learned from the Chaldeans because he came from Ur and his dad worshiped their gods and even worked in their fucking temples. So, you know, let's say Abraham learned all that shit from the Chaldeans, and then Moses learned all his shit from the Egyptians. Then how about you break down our Torah mysteries and compare them to your fucking Kemetic mysteries, and let's see how we jacked you. Because once we start breaking down mystery for mystery, dude, our shit's gonna fucking destroy theirs out of the water, because all their fucking mystery shit is nothing but homosexuality.
Yeah, and even their temple, their temple, man. It's not.
It's all crooked.
Whole body, yeah, it's a crooked.
Yeah, yeah, it's all funky, dude. Like, what the fuck, man? Your shit's all disabled, bro. What the fuck? You work for Orca or what, dog? Like, what the fuck is this going on here, man? Like, what? Ours is all pristine and fucking, you know, good looking to the eye and shit. And then you look at theirs and you're like, what happened? You know, homie got his legs whooped, bro. You know what I mean? I don't know, dude.
Which is a test of knowledge. It's not. They pump it up. But yeah, man, this has been a good one. I wanna just ask this last question. I just want if you could just break down Amos 1 and 6, and then I guess that could be my last question, man, because it's been a definite good discussion, just to get the understanding of who is the majority or minority of the people who came through the transatlantic slave trade.
Right. And I've got a bunch more documentation and a bunch more fucking shit to go through. You know what I mean? If anybody has any questions, you know, you including, hit me up, man. I got all the shit fucking ready to rock and roll. And you were saying, what was it, man?
For the wealth of knowledge. You know, if y'all check out his channel, he's got, you might, in one video is going to be 3 hours. You know what I'm saying?
It's not sorry for the long videos, man, but I pack it with so much information.
You know, I'll definitely say it's not like you're just 3 hours sitting up bullshitting. You're going through a lot of information. You're pulling sources. You're going into the Torah. You're going to the Hebrew. So it's not like, you know, you're just up there doing a lot of bullshit. We want to do 6 and like the 6th verse and the 9th verse.
Okay, what was that? Amos
1, 6, and 9.
Amos 1, 6, and 9. Okay, so now we got Amos 1 and 6, and it says, "Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Gaza and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof." That one, right?
Yeah, come.
Punishment thereof, because they carried away captive the whole captivity to deliver them to Edom. Right. See, and I actually have some really good Roman historians themselves talking about how they took us to Gaza before they shipped us off to Egypt again. They were taking us to Gaza and selling us they had like a major fucking slave port there, man. It was, what was it called? Hadrian's. Was that the same one? I think it's called Hadrian's something. If I'm not mistaken, that's the same one. But I actually have, if you don't mind,
go ahead.
I would like to read this real fast, just so you can hear it real fast, and then I'll address the other scripture, and then we can call it a day, because we've been chopping it up for a minute. I'm sure you have things to do, and I have a family to take care of, so we could always chop it up again and hit it up. You know, we hit it up different subjects or whatever the fuck, you know, priest on priest, you know, as they say.
Oh, that's right.
So let's go. Okay. Oh, right here. All right, so I'm going to read some excerpts from some history. So first we have the Josephus report, right? And we also have other reports of captivities into Egypt, like giant captivities being taken by ships to Egypt. It's first in the Greek period, close to the Roman era, and then again in the Roman era. But this is an excerpt from Josephus just talking about us going to Egypt, and then I'm going to read what other historians had to say about it. So this is from Josephus, the Jewish Wars, book 6, chapter 9, I believe. And it says, and then it's like column 2 or paragraph 2, I guess. You know how Josephus has like 20 fucking numbers to give you. And it says, okay, so this is quote, "Because the soldiers were now growing weary of bloodshed, their survivors apparently constantly Caesar orders to kill only those who offered armed resistance and to take alive all the rest. The troops, in addition to those covered by their orders, slaughtered the aged and the infirm. People to their prime who might be useful, they herded to the temple area and shut up in the court of the women. Caesar appointed one of his freedmen as their guard, his friend Fronto, to decide fate appropriate to each. All those who had taken part in sedition and brigandage, they informed against others. He executed. He picked out the tallest and handsomest of all the lot and reserved them for triumph. Of the rest who were over 17, he put in chains and sent to hard labor in Egypt, while great numbers were presented by Titus to the province to perish in the theaters by sword or by wild beasts. Those under 17 were sold, right? So this is like an account of the Roman era, and there's a lot more to it as well. But now we have after the fall of Betar, right, in 135 CE. This is from Cassius, 150 to 235 CE. A Roman historian tells us few Jews remained alive. 50 of their strongest fortified cities and 985 of their best towns and villages were demolished. 580,000 died on the battlefield, besides countless others. That's fucking 500,000, dude. Besides countless others who perished of hunger and pestilence. The entire land of Judea was almost transformed into a barren wasteland. So now this is from Munter, a Roman historian, from Primordial Ecclesiastes Africanae, page 85, paragraph, I think, 113 or something like that. And it says, now that Betar had been captured, everything came under human control, while Palestine, Judah was reduced to a desolate mound. Captives were sold into slavery in numbers too great to count. First, they were brought to the grand annual market at the Terebinth Elo in the tree of Hebron, which is fucked up because we were always in Hebron. That's where the cave is that we buried our foremothers. How fucking insulting. Or in the words of Hieronymus, to the 10th Ohel of Abraham near Hebron. Boom, they right there. Each slave sold for the price of a horse. Those captives who were not sold were then brought to the marketplace at Gaza, which, because of the great multitudes of slaves who were sold there, was called Hadrian's marketplace. And those who were still not sold there were herded into ships and were taken to Egypt. Many died in transit, whether by starvation or shipwreck, while many also were killed by cruel masters. Now, this is another excerpt from the History of Israel in Ancient Days, Hebrew Devere, 1971, page 321. The toll of Bar Kokhba uprising was devastating both on the population and on the places of habitation. The numbers of dead were awesome, while multitudes of Jews were taken captive to fill the slave markets near and far. The slave market of the Terebinth of Hebron was particularly famous as a center where Jewish slaves sent into captivity by Hadrian were sold. So many Jews were available that according to one report, a Jew was sold for as little as the price of a portion of horse feed. And then this is the last one, and I'll let you go, or I'll address the next verse, and then we can call it. Comes from A History of the Jewish People in the Times of Jesus Christ from Edinburgh, 1896, page 11. Innumerable was the multitude of those who were sold away as slaves. At the annual market of Terebinth of Hebron, they were offered for sale in such numbers that the Jewish slaves was of no more value than a horse. What could not be disposed was brought to Gaza and there sold or sent to Egypt, on the way to which many died of hunger and of shipwreck. So we have a good little handful of historians that talk about what happened in Gaza. As well as we know that, even spiritually nowadays, the Gazites are selling us to the Edomites with their propaganda that they're pushing within the community. Since we know that, from what Torah says, the 5 lords of the Philistines are still among us. So now we'll go to Amos, and you said verse, what was that? 9?
9, yeah.
9, right? For thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity of Edom and remembered not the brotherly covenant. And that's the same thing. And it's funny that you mentioned the Canaanites, because they did help to fucking sell us up and whatnot. And it's funny because that punishment for that is actually taking place right now as we speak in America. And if you don't mind, I would like to go to Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, right? And I know you guys have a different interpretation of this, but I would like to give mine, if that is okay. Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, right, verse 1, and I'm going to read out of your KJV for you. The word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, and we know that Tyrus, you know, obviously what you were just putting out now is referring to Canaanites. Because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God, I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas. Now, what's funny is that they're still doing that today. Don't, you know, a lot of the black community call themselves gods and call each other gods, and the black woman is God, and I am a God, and there is no God because I'm God. And okay, so it says, I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, and we know that what Babylon, the daughter of Babylon, is in the midst of many waters. Thou art a man and not God, though thy set thy mind as the mind of God. It says heart, but we know it's mind. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. And I know you guys say that that's like, you think you're wiser than Daniel and stuff. And whether it is they are wiser than Daniel, or they think they're wiser than Daniel, or if it's a question, are you wiser than Daniel? The fact is that they are wise, and they are on the level of Daniel somewhat, if it's going to mention him. You know what I mean? And so this is why you have a lot of the Hamitic people that are in our community that know the Torah. You know what I mean? And it's because these people know it. You know what I mean? They have with thy wisdom, or sorry, yeah, it says with thy wisdom and with thy wisdom and with thine understanding thou hast gotten thee riches. So there we go, with wisdom and understanding. So these people do have wisdom and understanding. So this is why people are like, oh, well, why can they break down the scripture? Because they fucking have wisdom and understanding, like goddamn Daniel. Not only that, but they're being fed by Amalek to push propaganda and to push this shit amongst our community. Just like I didn't get to bring that up, but the Hebos poster, I caught that of being a fraud. That blatant to push an agenda. And it's like, well, why? We need to start asking these questions. And it says, you've gotten riches, thou hast gotten gold and silver in thy treasures, and thy great wisdom, right? And what do we know? Gold and silver and treasures is also talking about wisdom, you know, the true wisdom of Yahweh. Thy great wisdom and thy traffic, thou hast increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. And it's funny, I wanted to point out that the black community is the biggest purchaser of goods, like, period. Like, they spend more money. I've heard, I don't know how many countless Pan-Africans talk about, oh, if we just kept the money, you know, amongst the community and bought black and all this shit, we would put the white man out of business. We spend more money than everyone else, and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's like, well, you know, Canaanite does mean merchant, and merchant, if you look at the etymology, technically means buyer. So, you know, that's kind of funny. And then it says, therefore, thus saith Yahweh, because thou hast set thy mind as the mind of God, behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations. And they shall draw thy swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. They shall bring thee down to the pit. Thou shalt die the deaths of them that are slain in the midst of the seas. And this is why they're just slaughtering people all in the streets. Wilt thou say before him that slayeth thee, I am God? But thou shalt be thou art a man and no God in the hand of him that slayeth thee. Thou shalt die the death as strange spoken it, says Yahweh. So you know, they're getting their punishment for what they did to us, for taking part in selling us like they did. You know, across into Egypt and stuff. And, you know, it obviously took place in their port cities and stuff. And you could read about how Tyrus was involved in all that. And then, like I said, look up those videos on YouTube, man, about those, the Canaanites that are still there in America, or in the land of Canaan. And they are bidding those in America to come back to them. And it's on my YouTube channel and my likes. And let me get it real fast. I'll get you the names of the videos. The first one is called Black Palestinian Girls in Israel. Then we have Black Shepherd in Israel Outback. And then we have Black Palestinian Natives of the Holy Land. And they're all from the same person. Mom Bob 26. It's all one word. MOMBOB 26. That's the page that produced the videos. And these are videos of, if you could see, that bottom one is that guy telling people that he's a Canaanite. The little boy, that's just one of the guys saying that this is a Canaanite indigenous person. But this video That's the one that kills it right there. But yeah, so
I know a documentary. A Muslim dude made a documentary going into Israel and interviewing certain different people. Like one dude was claiming to be like a actual Philistine. Boom, then you had one that was saying that he was an Israelite. So there's certainly a differentiation and remnants that still, of course, for the most part, Esau and Ishmael, the Arabs have done a tremendous job of pushing people out and displacing people. But of course, there's always going to be
those
a residue.
Those dudes are gnarly, man. Like those guys they definitely did a job on everybody. Honestly, man. Like Ishmael, Ishmael and Esau, man. Especially Amalek, dude. Those guys completely fucking demolished the earth. You know what I mean? Put people through all kinds of hell. Still fucking doing it. Still in league with each other, acting like they're fucking fighting. You know what I mean? We know that the 3 World Wars is coming up. We know that they're purposely gonna put Islam against the Zionism, and that's the whole reason why they're there and all that shit. You know what I mean? So it's really sad to see the state of the world that they've created for everyone. So Yahweh willing, their judgment and the judgment on the rest of the heathen will come swiftly and will come soon. Because I don't know about you guys, but I want to go the fuck home. Yeah. I fucking hate this place more than anything, and I am sick and fucking tired of being here. I am losing my fucking mind. What does it say? Oppression makes a wise man mad. And I'm fucking losing it, dude. And I hate this place, and it's just disgusting everywhere you go. All you see is fucking abominations. And, I think we should all start praying towards Jerusalem, to Yahweh, for us to get the fuck up out of here already, dude. I think we need concentrated people praying, you know what I mean? And we need actual effort to getting back to the Torah and the commandments and all that stuff, man, because that's the only fucking thing that's going to get us out of this shit. Because to me, it's been too long, in my opinion, my personal retarded opinion. I've been here. We've all been, in the words of Tahar, quote, "You niggas been into America too goddamn long," and I totally agree with that shit. That's like my favorite quote of his ever. And I totally agree. We've all been in America too goddamn long, and it's time to go the motherfucker home. So, thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me chat bring out some stuff. And I'm glad we got to dialogue and stuff. And a lot of good stuff was brought out, a lot of good facts. I would love to do so again about other topics as well. You know what I mean? Just even temple, Torah, laws, whatever we have, man. There's so many things to talk about in the Torah. It's an endless world of information. You know what I mean? That it'd be good to start edifying the people and bringing out hardcore facts. Like we go over the Exodus, start bringing out all them facts hardcore, because I just mentioned them. And, anybody could hit me up on Facebook. I have posts of all this shit with all the facts in them that I could tag people in and lead them to easily. I also have a bunch of videos, like you said, and then I have whatever facts I don't have on posts and videos I have written, or I could tell you where to go to find them. And I think it would be good for us to start bringing out facts like that, bringing out archaeology to prove to our people that we did fucking exist. You know what I mean? Like, just stuff like that to kind of lift the spirits of our people, bro. Because like right now, everybody, I don't know. If I feel that way, I figured everybody else feels that way. Like I feel like shit, so I'm sure everybody else feels like shit. So it'd be kind of nice to get like a little fucking upper, a little boost, every now and again. Especially because everybody's always used to arguing and doing a WWF fucking match all the time,
That's why the views. I marketed it like it was a WWE match, but I didn't have the intentions of being it like that. Right. But I know title in the video certain way is gonna bring it's gonna bring them in.
Right. And this is a lot more peaceable, and a lot more information gets brought out instead of everybody just yelling at each other and trying to overtalk each other and blah blah blah. And granted, like we may have each one of us
because
we
typing nigga fuck you get frustrated, man. You throw the phone down. That's why I like to just have the conversation, you know what I mean? So everybody can fully understand each other and plus I've been in Facebook jail. So a lot of this stuff that's going on right now, I'm hearing about, you know what I mean? So I'm like, wait, what? Somebody said, what? All right, let's actually talk about it. You know what I mean? And let's see what everybody means. You know what I mean?
It's like that. It's like that game. What do they call it? Telephone or whatever.
Yeah,
Where someone says something to someone and they pass it down the line. By the time it gets to the end, it's like completely fucking different. That's
yeah,
kind of like what happened here. But
yeah,
yeah. So thanks for letting me come on and explain myself. Not a lot of people give me that opportunity. So I appreciate that for sure.
definitely. No problem.
You know how everybody thinks of me, bro.
Yeah, everybody hates. Everybody does hate Qana. That's why I started talking and I started reaching out to Qana, man, because I realized everybody hated him. You know, everybody hated you, bro, and I was just like, well, why? A lot of times, the guy that's hated, you know, is the guy that might be on to something. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Right,
good to
right.
it's good to try to
It
kind
really
of start hearing people out.
to me, I don't even fear. I just think that, you know, because people fear what they don't know, right? And what's a reaction of fear? It's either fight or flight, right? So everybody chose fight, obviously. Um, and I think really what it is just because I'm a really fucking blunt person, like you know that, dude. Like I just say shit, and that's the thing. I say shit that people are afraid to say, that they're really thinking, but they don't want to say it. You know what I mean? And I think that that's what shocks a lot of people, and then especially because I don't give a shit how I talk. I, you know, fucking shit's every other goddamn word. You know what I mean? Just the way I talk and stuff, and just the information that I present, it really challenges a lot of what people have known as truth for the longest time. So I understand, and I don't blame anybody for fucking wigging out on me and thinking all kinds of shit. But like I said, that's why I appreciate people like you, and people like Ayash, because Ayash gave me a chance. Jose Vega, you know, shout out to all the brothers. Of course, my Tor family, man, the Yakad, you know, Anna and all her family, Hayaman and all his family, Magan, you know, Dan, you know, he's still hanging around there somewhere. You know what I mean? All the brothers Kazawan, you know, everybody. Sorry if I forgot your names and all that stuff. I don't want to keep wasting time, but you know, shout out to everybody that actually sat there and was like, okay, you know what? Let me just talk to this motherfucker. You know what I mean? And 9 times out of 10, when people actually sit there and talk to me, they're like, oh, actually, you know, you're actually a pretty cool dude, man. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate that. So, you know, thought it out for that for sure.
Yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate it. I hope you know, everybody, you know, in the audience was edified through the spirit, man, and you know, it was enjoyable for sure. You know, so yeah, if Lord willing, most I will, we could get more of these set up. Like I said, I'm in Facebook jail right now, but you know,
Right.
hollering Hakad, the deacon, is always a quick way to get in touch with me. Me and him is on the phone 12 hours a damn day. Okay. He's always a great me, you know.
Right, right. Well, yeah, yeah. If let me know when you're out of Facebook jail, man. We'll chop it up. Talk about some shit. I wanted to show you some stuff that I had found in the Hebrew and stuff like that recently.
Yeah, you
Because I
can
know
send it to me too. You can send it to my inbox. You know, you can always send stuff to my inbox. I just can't respond through my inbox. That's the only thing.
Right, right, right. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll send you some stuff that you might find interesting. Some stuff that I found. Because I know you're into the Hebrew and stuff, and you're one of the only brothers out there that actually kind of knows a little bit what the fuck he's doing, because everybody else kind of doesn't know jack. So like I like to share with other brothers that are into the Hebrew. And then but if not, you know, if I have to get a hold of you, talk to you, whatever, I can hit up Haka. But if not, hit me up when you get out of Facebook jail and that shit, and we'll chop it up for sure.
Definitely. For
And I just wanted to say real quick, you know, for everybody, Kawal Yudai Hawa, you know, all praise Yahweh for letting this go down tonight, you know, because schedules are hard. People have families, people have work. I had work today and I have work tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So, you know what I mean? So, you know how it goes. And so that just for us to be able to even fucking find the time to do this is amazing. Yahweh definitely blessed us with that. So thanks to him, thanks to you guys for having me on, and you know, hope everybody, big shalom to everybody, and stay tough, man. Stay with Yahweh.
God, shalom. You know, I thank everybody who tuned in. As well as a brother, man. Of course, we got to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and we say shalom.